In the frozen twilight of January 1945, as snow drifted like ash across the collapsing Eastern Front, Germany prepared for its final desperate offensive against the relentless Soviet advance, an attempt born not from confidence, but from the fading illusion that momentum could still be reversed, while exhausted Wehrmacht formations, scarred by 4 years of brutal attrition, dragged their weapons into position amid villages reduced to blackened skeletons, their footsteps sinking into roads choked with ice and wreckage. The Red Army, swollen with manpower and hardened by victories from Stalingrad to Belarus, pressed westward with unstoppable force, its artillery dulling the horizon with constant thunder, and yet Hitler demanded one more strike, one more improbable maneuver to blunt the coming storm, forcing German commanders to design Operation Solstice, a rushed, undersupplied, last-chance counterblow aimed at relieving the encircled garrison in the fortress city of Kustrin and delaying the Soviet path to Berlin, while across East Prussia and Pomerania, civilians fled under the rumble of Soviet tanks, their caravans stretching for miles as ice cracked beneath them on evacuation routes that had become battlefields in their own right. Logistical chaos defined both sides, but German shortages were catastrophic, fuel reserves nearly gone, ammunition rationed to mere handfuls per gun, armored divisions reduced to shadows with only a fraction of their original vehicles, and yet propaganda insisted on imminent salvation, urging soldiers to fight with fanatical resistance, though most simply fought from duty, fear, or the instinct to survive. When the offensive began on February 15th, German armor punched through snow-laden forests toward Arnswald, Panzer IVs and Panthers grinding forward under sleet, their tracks throwing mud and ice as assault guns provided covering fire. And for a fleeting moment they gained ground, slicing through thin Soviet screening units, capturing crossroads, pushing bridges, and sending brief shockwaves through the Soviet First Belarusian Front. But even these tactical successes were droplets against a tide. Soviet reinforcements poured in with staggering speed, heavy T-34s forming steel walls across the approaches, Katyusha batteries saturating entire sectors with screaming rockets, and infantry brigades reinforcing every village and farmstead, turning each one into a fortress that absorbed German momentum like wet sand. Commanders like General Bulk attempted to reorganize depleted battle groups under constant bombardment, yet every hour the front shifted against them, and by the third day Soviet counterattacks detonated across the entire line, their artillery shaking the earth as German fuel tankers, already nearly empty, were captured or destroyed, forcing crews to abandon panzers that had become nothing more than cold, silent iron shells. Meanwhile, in the skies above, the Luftwaffe, once a dominant force, could offer only scattered sorties, their pilots outnumbered, their aircraft worn and starved of fuel, while Soviet fighters prowled overhead with growing freedom, strafing convoys, smashing supply lines, and isolating German pockets. Reports from the front trickled back to Berlin, each one more grim than the last, yet Hitler dismissed them as defeatist pessimism, insisting the offensive continue. Even as battalions shrank to companies, companies to platoons, platoons to squads, and the icy wind carried the stench of burning armor across abandoned fields. When the breakthrough finally collapsed on February 18th, it did so violently. Soviet armored corps surged forward, encircling German spearheads, cutting retreat routes, overrunning command posts, and shattering anything that still resembled an organized unit, forcing surviving soldiers to flee through forests under artillery fire, while medics, overwhelmed and freezing, tried desperately to treat the wounded in barns lit by flickering lanterns. Kustrin, the city the operation had sought to rescue, remained isolated and doomed, its defenders fighting street by street as Soviet guns pulverized its ancient walls, and its fall opened the final gateway to Berlin itself. In the aftermath of the failed offensive, German casualty lists soared, tens of thousands killed, wounded, or captured, entire divisions erased from existence, their banners left fluttering in ruins, and equipment losses were irreplaceable, leaving the Eastern Front a hollow shell that could no longer delay the inevitable. Soviet morale surged, their confidence reinforced by the knowledge that Germany's last strategic counterstroke had failed completely, and Soviet high command accelerated preparations for the final assault on Berlin, amassing artillery concentrations of unprecedented scale, planning the blow that would end the war in Europe. The psychological shock within Germany was immense. Civilians realized that no hidden reserve, no miracle weapon, no surprise attack was coming to save them, and diaries from the time reflect a shift from strained hope to resigned fear, as the thunder of war drew closer to the heart of the Reich. Militarily, the offensive marked the collapse of German operational capability in the east, proving that the Wehrmacht could no longer coordinate large-scale maneuvers, could no longer mass resources, could no longer shape the battlefield in any meaningful way, and historians later viewed this moment as the definitive point at which Germany ceased to function as a strategic actor and became, instead of force, simply falling backward toward defeat. Yet within this chaos were stories of human endurance, soldiers carrying wounded comrades through blizzards, tank crews refusing to abandon burning machines until the last shell was fired, civilians sheltering children beneath coats as artillery shattered the world around them. Moments of resilience overshadowed by the vast machinery of war. The failure of Germany's final Eastern Front offensive demonstrated not only the physical collapse of an army, but the exhaustion of a nation that had pushed itself to destruction, a lesson in how wars driven by ideology outrun logistics, reality, and human limits. And as Soviet forces prepared their final march to Berlin, the snow-covered fields of Pomerania lay silent, scattered with wreckage, a frozen monument to a battle that changed nothing except to hasten the end.